Hello everyone, I bring you the Mannequin of the Month today for December 2024. As is typical, the topic we're going to talk about here was chosen via a poll over on Patreon. The corporal tier on Patreon get to vote each month. There are generally three options and they get to vote on what will be covered for Mannequin of the Month that month. In the poll for December, I wanted to put forward an option which was sort of appropriate for the month, and what we're looking at here was a topic 80 years on from when this sort of kit would have been appropriate and the specific unit we're talking about. This represents the kit of a trooper in 1st Royal Tank Regiment in Neerhoven, Belgium in December of 1944, so 80 years on from that. I thought that would be an appropriate topic to cover, and thankfully the corporal tier over on Patreon voted for this, so we get to cover it. And it's rather nice to have on the Mannequin, sort of appropriate for this month. It gave me opportunity to dig out the winter tank suit, which I don't have opportunity to do very often, and it looks rather good on the Mannequin set up like this, I think, so it'll be nice to have this on the Mannequin during December. So we'll get into the details of what we have here. There's not actually a huge amount of kit and so forth to talk about. Probably the main thing we'll end up talking about are the details of the tank suit. I have covered that elsewhere on the channel, but obviously talking about it specifically here, set up with some other bits and pieces. But we'll start at the top as we normally do. In terms of headgear here, we don't have the Royal Armoured Corps pattern helmet. A lot of photographs of the time certainly show members of 1st Royal Tank Regiment wearing their berets, and this is the black Royal Armoured Corps beret. Of course, this has been introduced for use by the Royal Tank Corps in the interwar years, and then was used by the Royal Armoured Corps more generally during the Second World War. We do have the distinctive Royal Tank Regiment cap badge worn here, of course, on the black beret, and this includes a tank surrounded by a laurel wreath surmounted by a crown, and then of course the scroll at the bottom there with the motto "Fear Naught." So that's the headgear worn here. At the neck we can see a scarf is worn, and this is typical of comforts knitted for the troops during the course of the Second World War, and it's obviously made in a sort of olive drab wool here. Very common to see in period photos, these being worn in conjunction with the winter tank suit, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. In the winter of 1944-45, British armoured units, British tank units benefited greatly, the men benefited greatly from having the winter tank suit. It's an oversuit designed to be worn over the battle dress uniform, and particularly when you are in a situation where you're in a tank, you're obviously quite often sitting down, and certainly in action, I think the adrenaline pumping, you can get rather warm, but if you're simply on a road march, driving and so forth, tanks are a very, very cold place to be. Obviously, you're essentially in a large steel box. So having something with the extra layers of insulation that the tank suit has, also the hard-wearing nature of this, the heavy canvas it's made from, it really is quite a good design, and from what I understand they were well liked, and they were used right the way through until at least the 1960s by armoured car and tank crews. So certainly I think quite a popular garment, and they're very commonly seen in photographs of the time, obviously issued out as protection against the cold, extensively used in Korea as well, of course. So overall, quite a good design of garment. As you can see, it opens down the front here. It actually opens from the collar right the way down each leg with these two zips. So these come down and then run right the way down each leg, so the entire front of the suit can be opened out for easy donning and doffing. You have the two chest pockets here, obviously pen pockets across the front of this one here. The pockets all close with Nui press studs or snaps, and you can see examples of those on the chest pockets here. There are numerous leg pockets and so forth as well, which we can't see details of here on the Mannequin, but I have covered the tank suit previously on the channel. I will review that video and perhaps make a more in-depth video looking at it if I'm not happy with it, because while I have it out, that may be something I could do later on in the month, is a more in-depth look at this. But I'll look at the video I've already made talking about it and see if I feel it's necessary or feel it desirable to make a follow-up video or a replacement video talking about it in a bit more detail. So you have the two zips running down the front there. Inside this, of course, there are braces to help support the weight of the tank suit, and that's not something you can see here, but just something to mention. And there is also a waist belt, which you can just see the tail end of here. Most of the detail of that is, of course, hidden under the web belt worn around the waist there, but there is an external belt there, which uses a buckle very similar to that, or identical to that used on the 1940 and later patterns of British battle dress. The toothed buckle used on those patterns of battle dress is also used for the waist belt here. At the waist, we have a very, very stripped down set of 1937 pattern web equipment, literally just the waist belt, pistol ammunition pouch, and the pistol case or pistol holster. We have that there. You'll notice that the belt's been pulled round slightly to the left. This is fairly typical to see in period photographs, sometimes pulled right the way round, so that the pistol holster and the pistol ammunition pouch hang directly down the centre line of the body. This means when you're sitting down that they hang in a comfortable position and are easily accessible as well. And as I say, that's quite common to see in period photographs, and just a detail to note here. The pistol carried would generally speaking be the Enfield revolver. I don't have one of those in the holster here. This is just has a holster filler in it, but that's the pistol that would be generally be carried. Of course, 38 caliber and 38 caliber ammunition would be carried in the ammunition pouch above. Some men would, of course, have had the Royal Armoured Corps pattern holster, which is an open top holster with ammunition loops on the front, which has a loop to hang down low below the belt. But it's very common to see men of various armoured regiments, armoured units, using standard 1937 pattern pistol holster and ammunition case as we have here, as opposed to having been issued the specialist Royal Armoured Corps holster. So just something to note here, you could see the Royal Armoured Corps holster. That's certainly another option, but I decided to go with the standard examples here, the standard holster and standard ammunition pouch, because they were issued as well. So just a point I thought I could bring up in the video by having the standard holster and ammunition pouch on the belt there. That's the front of the Mannequin. So we'll start moving this around now and have a look at some of the other details. So something I didn't mention talking about the front of the tank suit, the front of the Mannequin, is the hood, which you can see more clearly here in profile going around the back there. We'll have a look at the more details of this when we look at the back of the Mannequin as well. You can see this can actually be buttoned up. So there are buttons, 2 buttons here, battle dress type buttons on this side of the hood, and on the other side there are 2 button holes, so it can actually be buttoned right up. The collar of the tank suit can be turned up and buckled up with the 2 buckles and corresponding straps here, and then the hood can also be buttoned up around as well to give plenty of insulation and warmth around the head if required. You can see we do have an epaulette up on the shoulder here. That also fixes in place with a Nui press stud. If we come down the arm here, you can see there are tabs on the cuff to adjust this in, and these again work with Nui press studs. You can see that there, and inside, one thing we can see here, as well as the label, which is actually visible in the cuff there, we have the elasticated inner cuff for this as well. Again, the idea of this, as we've seen with other cold weather clothing we've talked about on the channel, is to trap as much warm air under and within the tank suit as possible. That's the whole point of insulated clothing, is to trap air, trap warm air, and stop it from escaping, and that obviously means that you will stay a lot warmer if the clothing is effective in doing that. So we have that elasticated cuff inside the outer cuff of the tank suit, as you can see there. You can see here lower down we have a flap there which allows you to get through not only into a pocket in the tank suit, but there's actually a slit in there to get through into the pockets of the garments worn underneath as well. You can see one of the leg pockets here that unfortunately has lost its Nui press stud. You may be able to see that, so I need to do a little bit of repair work there. This tank suit has been quite heavily used. And you can also see here there is a dressing pocket down on the front of the suit here, just behind the holster there. You can see that here. So that's the right hand side of the Mannequin. We'll move this around now and have a look at the back. Looking at the back here, you can see the bulk of the hood up at the top here. We turn this down, you can see it is lined with khaki flannel wool, very similar to the material British shirts were made from. You can see that there. You can see the details of construction there, the seams and so forth. Obviously it's a very large sort of plain feature at the back here. You can see the seam running down the back here. You can actually see the attachment point for the inner braces here. You can see the stitching for those, and you'll note the belt is pulled round slightly, as already mentioned, so you can see detail of that there as well. We'll finally move on to look at the left-hand side here. There isn't a huge amount more to see. You can see elbow reinforcement, the stitching for the elbow reinforcement there on the arm. I didn't mention that when we were looking at the right-hand side. Other than that, it's pretty much a mirror image. Other than not having the dressing pocket, it's pretty much a mirror image of the other side of the suit, and there isn't really anything else to talk about here. So that's the left-hand side of this. So I hope you found it interesting looking at this. I'm very pleased that this topped the poll, not only because we're talking about it sort of 80 years on from when this kit was worn in the specific scenario we're talking about, but also it's a nice set of equipment to have on the Mannequin. I've not had the tank suit out on display for a little while, so that's another nice element of this, is it's nice to get kit out which hasn't seen hasn't been on display. I wouldn't say the light of day, but it has seen the light of day, but it's nice to have it out on display properly on the Mannequin. So it'll be here in the front room for the rest of December, up until the January Mannequin of the month, of course. So very pleased from that point of view. Hopefully it's been interesting talking through this, and thank you to those who voted for this over on Patreon. As I say, not a huge amount to talk about here really, given the limited equipment and so forth, but nevertheless I do hope it has been interesting. If you have found it interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below, and that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and would like to support the channel, Patreon and PayPal are both linked down below, and as I always say, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is greatly appreciated. I can't emphasize that enough. Thank you all very much indeed. Of course, if you want to vote on the topic that's going to be covered each month on Mannequin of the Month or in Mannequin of the Month, the corporal tier over on Patreon gives you that option. There will of course be photographs of this posted up on social media as well. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down in the description. And if you'd like to get in touch with me but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.